everybody. I'm Marcus, aka Crow, at Octane Sound, and I'm going to talk to you about producing voice talent.
Request for communication. Is someone there? If anyone can hear me, this facility requires your assistance. Statement success. By initiating that final protocol, you have transferred auxiliary power from this facility.
So when you're producing voice talent or any kind of production in the studio, really, you want to make sure that you have some sort of standardization of session workflow. That can go a long way in terms of how much you get done, productivity. So I'm going to give you some recommendations on how to improve your output per session.
Cookies! Oh, I am sorry. I have to bake another
Before
batch.
the session, one thing you can do and should do is clean your studio. Pretty obvious reasons. This is one of the first things you want to ensure for your session. Your equipment should be clean and sanitary for use. Be sure that your pop filter is clean and replace it if necessary. When you clean your studio and it's organized, you'll always have a better idea of where that adapter is if you need it, or if you need to make a quick change to performer's environment. It's easy to do so.
God, life is such a hassle, you know?
Another thing before the session is creating a session template. So before you start recording voice sessions, take some time to record yourself or a volunteer in the studio that you're working in to get familiar with the microphone and microphones that you're going to be using. If the goal of a session template, it's essentially to have a one-click setup for your session. So be sure to have any plugins that you're going to be using during that session already loaded into the channels that you need them, and all your input monitoring configured so that you have eyes on your levels and metering. And make sure that the talent can also hear your talk back, an internal and external source in their headphones for any kind of mood music that maybe would help them get into the character, and also, of course, their own voice. Once you have your session template, you come back to it, give it a little time, come back to it later before you have the session, and make sure that it's going to work for you. And you can make any final tweaks that you might need. Have yourself or a volunteer go ahead and record some lines and have them speak at the different dynamic volumes, soft, at a regular volume, and at a high volume, so that you can get an average setting that you can tweak later. Check the levels and use your ears. Make your final adjustments before using your template, and you can have a really good start if you have a really good session template.
I came to this place looking for water, but they're only selling...
All right, so the day of the session, you want to make sure you sign any paperwork first. Now, if it's union, that is usually handled by, either the studio manager or with artist representation. If it's not a union, I still have people sign release forms, just because if I'm recording something for use in a project, in a non-union project, then I will need to be able to use the recordings. Kind of goes without saying, but a lot of people forget this and may have issues later trying to use voice talent recordings. They don't have a release. And then someone wants to contest it. It's really more of a protection and a safeguard than anything. So before you get into the creative, get any paperwork out of the way that needs to be signed. Non-disclosure agreements, performance release forms, photo and video release forms if you're filming or there's going to be photography. And that takes care of that right out the gate, and you're ready to start diving into creative things.
My world revolves around the propagation of DNA. DNA goes into LifeNet.
So
DNA
you want
comes
the
out of
session to go as smooth as possible, so I'll give you a couple of tips to help you with that. For first readings, these can be critical for the talent as far as them being comfortable in the space. So it's their first opportunity. For some artists, it's their first time getting into a booth, their first time being in a recording studio, and so you want to make that experience as comfortable as possible for them. For first reads, I explain and inform the actor that we're going to do a reading to get levels, but really the levels should be fairly close if you've got your session template done. So this serves two purposes. One, it allows you or the engineer to get a more accurate level for that particular actor to dial it in. And two, it allows the actor to get comfortable or warm up in the space. So with the sample scripts as they do their first read, I usually just let them roll and see how they react, and then sort of coach and direct from there. As far as directing goes, you really, number one, you need to know your material. That means whatever it is you're recording, be sure to do some due diligence and read about it, because if you're the one producing it, ultimately, yes, it's a performer performing it, but ultimately you're the one producing it, getting the actor into the studio, responsible for getting the performance needed for whatever project it is. So you're responsible for it. Be supportive to the talent. This should go without saying. You want to be supportive to the talent, and if they need a break, you give them a break. If they need inspiration, do your best to provide it. It's a lot easier to direct when you're moving than it is to keep stopping and starting and stopping and starting. You may learn that as you get more experience as a producer, but when you're first starting out, these are my tips for you. Keep the tape rolling. Keep seeing what you're going to get. A lot of times the actors will surprise you, and the talent will surprise you with how creative they are.
I am now able to trace Tatrax's interference, override it, and channel it back to his...
Troubleshooting in the session or having stalled reads, otherwise known as like performance anxiety or red light syndrome. Some actors get self-conscious in the studio, musicians as well. If this happens with your talent, you can explain to them how their performance will be composited, and which is where you take pieces and put together all the best takes. And that should help with some of their performance anxiety, knowing that not everything they say and every little breath they take is going to end up in whatever project they're working on. They don't know this sort of stuff generally. So explaining that to them can really take a load off of their mind, knowing that it's going to be edited and someone's going to be picking the best of their performance.
Hey, new kid. I don't know if anyone told you yet, but let me set the record.
So after the session and you're ready to start compositing, naming stuff, I wanted to bring this up. This is a really important thing that has helped me organize terabytes and terabytes of music and recordings over the years, is develop your own naming convention. Now, naming conventions are extremely useful, but for some it's hard to get into the habit of. When you use naming conventions, you're saving yourself from staring at blank folders or files with random names. And, you keep the original file and composite the rest. So an example would be, since we're Octane Sound, I could put in front of our file name OS and then an underscore, the type of session, if it's voice, VO, underscore, actor name, be different for each actor, and that could be my master for that session. What that does is when you consistently name files like that for every session, when you go to search for a particular performance and you need to composite it, it's there, and it's you can sort by name. So everything that's OS underscore is going to be right there, and it'll be in alphabetical if you have OS_music _ whatever the project name is. It'll be alphabetically listed. It's just an easy way to do it, and whenever you send the work off to someone else, it's also very easy for them to understand how it's all structured.
As was the one who came before.
All right. Again, I'm Marcus, aka Crow Bennett from Octane Sound, and I just gave you some tips that I use when I produce voice talent for union and non-union projects. If you are a studio owner or voiceover artist and you're interested in participating in some of the non-union projects that we have going on, then send me an email at contact.octanesound@gmail.com. Otherwise, subscribe and check out some of the other content that we have, and appreciate you watching, and live long and prosper. See you guys later.